Hello and welcome again to Pluralsight Spotlight. I'm your host for this episode, Adam Gunn. If you're new to the series, first, thank you for joining us. We love that you're here. Our Spotlight series is a chance to meet some of the incredible people behind the Pluralsight platform. Our brand is built on the back of incredible authors, training architects, developers, engineers, and everyone who makes our platform tick. My guest today is one of Pluralsight's preeminent experts on cybersecurity operations, with a background in federal and business defensive and offensive cyber operations and system automation. He actively contributes to multiple open and closed source security operation platform projects and continues to create tools and content to benefit the community. He also serves in a part-time capacity with the Air National Guard, helping defend the U.S. in cyberspace, and is our resident expert on cybersecurity attacks, vulnerabilities, and threats. It's my privilege to welcome to the spotlight Aaron Rosenmund. Aaron, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam.
I'm excited that you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
Good. You dressed up for us today.
I did, just for you. I don't always dress like this.
You're the first person to put on a tie. I see you're rocking the Pluralsight Air Force Ones.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a worthy investment, but now I have to get return on it. So I have to, and here's the place to do it.
Well, we're glad to see those on the spotlight stage today. We like to start these interviews with a little bit of backstory and just kind of a personal glance into how you got where you are today. Where did your journey into cybersecurity start?
Yeah, I mean, a kind of an unoriginal start, but in the military. And I went into system administration, actually. So it's called Cyber Systems Operations, which sounds very cybery, right? It is not. You are a server admin, right? And doing that, I realized that a good portion of the things I did, I could automate. And so I automated myself out of a job there. And then got into some really large scale automation for deploying really cool projects on legitimately secret networks. And when I did that, one of the things we realized is that no one called us. And we're like, oh no, what's going on? Maybe there's a security problem here. And so I started digging into how do we solve that problem, help stand up some of the first small security operations groups with the Air Force that were localized there, and kind of took it from there.
That's incredible. Are the threats as real as we would imagine that they are? I'm sure with that perspective, you were seeing things that the public doesn't see.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's even more real than you would expect. If with the Colonial Pipeline incident, I'm sure we all heard about that when we were trying to pour gas into our plastic bags, right? Everyone realized, hey, this is really scary and can have an impact on our world. What you don't see is the significant impacts that happen every day from cyber attacks. And so it's pretty scary.
Yeah, and introduce threat modeling into that backstory. Where did that expertise come to fruition?
Yeah, so there's a number of kind of definitions for threat modeling, but for the purpose of this, we can kind of discuss it as how do we approach a system or a network or a product or an application and say, hey, if I wanted to identify ways that we could attack that, how would we do that? And the purpose of that is to kind of proactively identify ways that someone who wants to do it maliciously would attack that application or network, and then close those gaps real quick, right? So you're kind of having a friendly person who has a semi-malicious mind, take a look at it. And so I got involved with that in a few different areas in the military, and then after I got out, I do a number of pen tests and things like that. But more specifically, I run the National Red Team for an exercise called Cyber Shield. So it's the largest unclassed cyber exercise for the DoD in the world. And our Red Team this year should be about 130 people. It's my 5th year leading that team. And that's what we do, kind of select different sectors. This year it's actually trains and the train sector for critical infrastructure. And figure out, we meet with people like the engineers from Siemens who developed how all those systems work and try to figure out, okay, explain to me how this works. And we're going to identify ways that we could potentially attack it, and then we're going to kind of act that out and see what happens.
I want to pull on this string, this, I think you said semi-malicious mind. Were there moments in high school where were you the guy doing anything?
Maybe that's an intro. I'm not really sure what the pattern would be of people who end up in this space. but no, I was more the guy who would like fall asleep for the physics test and then like wake up and finish it real quick without studying. But beyond that, it was more of Einstein at some point said that like true intelligence is just being able to connect seemingly disparate things, right? And I think it's that perspective of just having a lot of different kinds of experiences and backgrounds, and then applying all of that to the way that I look at different systems. So like actually my career began running a construction company.
Okay.
So just a lot of different background.
Yeah. Is there a high degree of like stress in the roles and the background, like where you were in the military? Did it require a level of stress management that
Yeah,
unique?
so when I was active, what I did, it didn't become too stressful other than there's this impending doom that if I'm not looking at something, it's like Schrodinger's cat, right? Like if you don't open the box, you don't know if it's dead or alive. It's like that. It's like if you don't actually look into the network to see what's going on, you don't know if you're being attacked or not, right? And there's a lot of places that needed someone to look at them. And so I think the stress of, hey, that's our responsibility. It's our job, right? And that applies too. So after I got out and went part-time and I was looking in Pluralsight, I continue now. I actually moved up to the Delaware Air National Guard. And in any of those roles, where there's high stakes, there's stress. But I wouldn't necessarily compare it to some other roles in the military, honestly. So,
Are you an unfair advantage in an escape room?
I've never lost an escape room, which I really hope there's a few people I know because we was competing with a friend of mine named DJ, and he recently did finally lose at an escape room, but I wasn't there, and I'm saying that that's the reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
You recently won a prestigious Order of Thor award. To those of us not in the security world, sounds like a really cool award, but it has some pretty substantial meaning in the industry. Could you give the audience a look into that and why it's significant?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for asking. It's something I'm pretty proud of, and I'm not really one of those like award people, I guess. I don't know if that's a type of person, but I mentioned my involvement with CyberShield. So that takes a lot of hours. It's mostly volunteer. And when we get there, it's 2 straight weeks of developing attacks and then like executing those attacks against 35 to 40 different teams and organizing all those red teams or attacker teams to execute those attacks. We accomplish emulation of like 3 different kinds of groups, so whether it be a criminal actor or maybe it's a foreign nation state that we're trying to emulate to get people experience with that. My team's job is to execute on those flawlessly throughout the week, right? And that's really difficult to do, not just build all of it, but also execute that and have what we call threat accurate attacks, right? And so I think for my contributions through that, a lot of the team that has been there with me up and through last year definitely made that happen and submitted me for that award from the MCPA, so it's the Military Cyber Professional Association. And they have a board that selects it, and then one of my mentors actually flew in to award it to me. So it's General Williams. I was really happy with that. I've kind of seen her grow in her career, and she's helped me grow in my career. And it is meant to represent a significant contribution to the community. So.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd love your perspective. When we dive into the skills that are most needed in the industry, cybersecurity is always, if not at the top, very close to the top. It feels like there's a need there in the market for these skills, and yet year over year there seems to be a gap. Do you have a perspective on, how, like, where's the miss there? Is there something happening that can be corrected? Is it just the level of skill that's required?
Absolutely. So, we're at Pluralsight, so leveling people up and skilling people up is what we really like to talk about. But in this industry specifically, I think one unique thing to think about is we keep looking at how do we get people into cybersecurity. That implies a junior role. The problem is that the gap is not just in the junior role. It's throughout the spectrum of roles, right? So whether it be an intermediate role or someone who's proficient in the role, there's a really large gap there too, right? Not just people that we need to convert over, as well as there's a gap in advanced members in the community also. An interesting thing in cybersecurity is that the level of skill that you have in your organization is directly pitted against the level of skill that the criminals have in their organization. So you can almost think of like your skills pipeline is actually versus their skills pipeline. You all have the same problems. It's just humans on both sides of it, right? So if they're more skilled, they're going to win. If you're more skilled, you're going to win, which ends up saving you money, and we don't have cyber attacks. And so that's really how we view that problem. And we really need more people to learn, not only, yes, if you're an accountant, but you think you have the perspective that we talked about earlier and you want to get into this, by all means, we'll take you. However, if you are a junior member in the community and you're like, you know what, I want to get better, we need you to skill up too, to fill those intermediate roles. And we need people to dedicate themselves to becoming advanced.
I love that. And you've recently taken a new role as a curriculum lead over security content at Pluralsight?
Yeah, so I'm the director of security research and development. I like having the research thing thrown in there because unlike some other areas, we actually do quite a bit of research and then provide that back out to the community. And we're responsible for our hands-on lab platform also, which we're really excited about and are accelerating into having what I think is the best content out there for a hands-on modality.
Yeah, I'd love for you to click in. I love what you just explained, how, I think I had that same bias of like, you've got to start at the beginning. But if there are these skill gaps at every level of an organization, how are you organizing curriculum to address that problem?
Yeah, great question. So we kind of look at it in those three sections. So it seems like a very complicated problem, and I'm not saying it isn't. But the step one is, do you have a section of your company that you want to convert into new roles, right? Or are you looking to hire high-performing individuals and then skill them up to be able to start a career in cybersecurity? That in itself is a solution that we provide through literacy and what we call our foundations content, right? And it's content that gives you the ability to kind of quickly catch up. So I mentioned that I started as a system admin. You imagine there's a lot of stuff I did for years that helped me understand how servers work, right? At kind of a basic level. And then I did security. What we need now, and what we've been trying to do, is take people, you're going to come from your CS degree, and we're going to get you into security. But it doesn't work because you didn't have that other experience, right? I say it doesn't work. I mean, varying levels of success, but there's a lot of implied knowledge that you're missing when we go to talk about more complex things. So DNS, we all know that's how when you type the URL in, press enter, it matches it to the IP and you can access the internet, right? It can also be used for what we call command and control in a malicious way. But if you don't know how DNS works, you're definitely not catching command and control over DNS, right? And so that foundational level kind of catches a lot of that. Separately, we then have, okay, you're there. We now need you to be able to skill up in your role. So we have role-based content that spans the spectrum of all of the roles that you need in cybersecurity to protect your organization and take people kind of from that junior level all the way through where we consider them intermediate. And then there's the advanced piece. At this point, we figure you kind of know what you're doing. And with that, do you need us to tell you how to think about things? Not necessarily. We don't need to kind of guide you into how to perform your daily job. But there is stuff that happens, like we just had the CVE come out for Microsoft, where you don't even have to do anything. I just send you an email. It sends me your password. That's not good, right? But okay, so what do I do about that when I show up to work? Well, what we're trying to do with this section or that solution is help people who are already proficient understand what to do when they show up for work to protect their companies that day. And that's where you reach the level of like, hey, my skills are at the levels of the highest skills of the attackers, and we're head to head now.
And our leaders, like I imagine like there's a need at, CIOs, CTOs need, some of this training as well. Is there application
Absolutely.
in that top section for them as leaders?
Yeah, so we call it operationalizing threat intelligence, right? But there's also a very large portion of it, like we're filming right now. We're gonna be filming what we call security hot takes, where we cover not just a topic in general, but how to think about it, how we think about it. And so we've been asked a lot for our team internally is like, we really just want to know, like, what is your assessment of this situation, whether it be ChatGPT or if it's the LastPass breach and what do we do now and like that kind of thing. And how do I protect my organization at a high level when these kind of breaches keep happening? That series does address that. Absolutely.
I love that. in this series, we're admittedly a little high level, but are there 2 or 3 specific topic areas that you feel are most critical that organizations should really be paying attention to in the cybersecurity landscape?
100%. If you know me, I love to stand on a soapbox, and my soapbox has changed from year to year. Last year was kind of this thing of humanize the threat. And I just talked about the skills pipeline being, it's humans on both sides. And so that kind of helps. When you get malware and you get ransomware, you're like, oh man, I got ransomware. There's some crazy advanced group out there, right? And you're like, no, it's a human who wrote it, who goes home and has a family and plays Xbox. And you know what I mean? Like, it's still just a person. And that kind of helps you figure out how to manage your workforce to match that. This year, the biggest thing to focus on is to what I call become the threat. I'm not saying you need to go out and start attacking people. What I'm saying is we have all this money we've invested into our processes, our people, our technology. We have X-gen stuff, we have next-gen stuff, we have everything you can imagine. But if you don't actually test to make sure it's working, then you really don't have any idea. We're back to like Schrödinger's cat again, right? So the ability to like, hey, Log4j came out, maybe I should like test the attacks that are being used by the bad guys against my stuff and see if it's actually detected. And I would say, honestly, even to the viewers, like if you haven't done that, then you're probably not as protected as you think.
And is that in alignment with some of your recent courses that you've
100%.
published?
So we are pretty well built out within the defensive space, as well as kind of pen testing in that area. This year, we're coming out with Red Team Operations, pretty heavy, where it dives into not just how to do that, but how to do it in a way that's sustainable and gets you maximum ROI over the shortest period of time.
Some of my favorite security courses that I've watched are where you dive into a real live threat. Log4j, I think, was the one I'm most familiar with. Is there one of those that you're most proud of, or you would particularly reference where we've dove into a real threat?
Yeah, so we just wrapped up the kind of core component of our incident response series in threat hunting. And each of those, what we actually do is we take real current threats, emulate all of their TTPs, and then walk through the scenario of how you would, for incident responder, respond to them. Like, what does it look like live? And those are real threats. And then for threat hunting, it's even like one notch up, like even more advanced, where we do talk about things like DNSC2 and how you would write custom scripts to detect that, right? And so it's both sides of it.
What advice would you give to, tech leaders who might be tuning in today, who are processing, all of this information? Is there anything in particular you would advise C-level leaders right now?
100%. So the biggest thing is not to get wrapped up in your compliance. Don't get wrapped up in ISO. Don't get wrapped up in a framework. Just go back to the basics of the processes. What are the things I need to protect, right? How am I protecting them? How am I detecting the things that I don't know about or can't protect? Then make sure I have a response action. After I respond, and this is really big, after I respond to something, make sure I know what happened and how they got in originally, because breaches happen, right? How did they get in originally? And then go emulate that threat and make sure that whatever fix you did actually fixed it, right? And then you just loop. And it just kind of takes all of the things that we do and simplifies it down to, hey, this is a process that is a continual loop, and those are the functions that you need to do to protect your organization. And a lot of times we get caught up in a lot of reactive security that's mixed with a bunch of like governance, risk, and compliance. That is good. That is actually the very beginning of what I just talked about, but then we never make it to the rest. And my advice is that you build all of it at the same time.
I'd love your perspective. Like, there's lots of places companies, organizations, individuals can turn for cybersecurity learning. Like, what differentiates cybersecurity content on the Pluralsight platform? What are you most proud of as a curriculum leader?
Yeah, for me, it is not just the level of advancement, but the realism and the focus that everyone has on our team and the way that we've developed the curriculum in trying to take our experience and then level you up very quickly, right? Like, one of the examples I like to use is if you're looking at network traffic, it's just PCAPs going by, right? And you're like, I've never, like, all of it looks bad, all of it looks good. I don't know, right? And then you're like, well, hey, this is bad traffic. Okay, cool. So now if I see that, I know it's bad. And then we do it over and over and over, right? And that's like rapidly gaining you experience to like, oh, I would have known that if I did this job for 5 years. But now when I look at something, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I've seen that before, that's bad. And that's exactly what we do across all of the roles. And so that is what we're extremely proud of. If you go watch our content, we're not trying to waste your time by taking you back to doing like running you through certifications. We're trying to give you something that in each clip, in each module, you can say, oh wait, I actually probably should go check that right now, right? And that's probably what I'm most proud of now.
You mentioned certifications. I'd love to hear like what role do they play in, it sounds like you have a strong perspective on where they fit and what priority they should have.
Certifications are important, don't get me wrong, but they don't take you all the way to being proficient in your job in security. And I think that's where some of the struggle comes, because in IT ops, if I want to learn VMware, right, I take the VMware certification, and I've done this. It actually does tell me exactly how to do that job with that technology. In cybersecurity, it's like, well, we just kind of need you to protect all of the technologies. And so no one cert does that. So our certifications are actually kind of general, right? Like even CISSP is like, here's like all of the attacks and you should be aware of that. And here's all of the threat factors and you should be aware of that. And you're like, yeah, that's great, but how now do I apply it? And so that's kind of where certifications fit almost across the board. Now, there's no really great way to say, hey, do I know if this person has invested time in learning cybersecurity unless they've invested time to try to get some certifications. Like that is a great way to do that. And so I can say like this person cares, they're going to continue to invest in themselves, they're interested in the space. So if they have certifications in that space, that's great. And that is a tool. And it's pretty much how companies kind of use them now. Can they do their job effectively to stop the ransomware attack so it doesn't cost me $300 million? I don't know. Like that's where we still have to have all this additional content.
I'm curious, is there an example or have you ever gotten the feedback that a particular course has helped, mitigate a cybersecurity threat?
Yeah, I have. Not very directly, but I think it was in the comments of one of my courses in a path called Security Event Triage. That is where we heavily invest in, and especially in a more advanced way, into doing things like catching hardware supply chain compromise. And they were trying to solve a very complicated problem of how do I identify if hardware is acting weird in my environment, right? And this is kind of a high level attack, and usually you're concerned about this kind of thing in sensitive environments. And there's just no good way to get at it. As it turns out, if you look at the way that hardware behaves across the board and kind of average that out and use what most companies call machine learning, but what is really statistical regression analysis. So it's just like math over time, right? Like, is it weird? Is it acting weird? You can identify a device that's acting weird, cross-reference it with the distributor, you're like, oh yeah, that actually came from the wrong place. Or something's compromised that and it's making the fan speeds change and that's transmitting binary data. That's weird, right? And so that's some feedback that I did get. It helped them approach that problem set in a way that they didn't think they could before, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I love that. I often think of, courses and learning, creating innovation, creating revenue streams for businesses. But in the case of cybersecurity, you're actually protecting organizations from millions and millions of dollars in loss, and that has an equal ROI, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, that's kind of how we talk about your assessment. And this doesn't help that path so much, but if you're spending more on your cybersecurity team and your technologies than you expect to lose from being breached, then you should probably reduce that. However, that's pretty much generally never the case.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, your budget is how much could we lose?
Well, really appreciate the conversation and you stopping by the studio today. We like to end these interviews with a little bit of random fun. My social team has prepped me with some questions to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm fascinated by the Rorschach like answers that we get from the author. So if you're game,
yeah, I'm game. Hopefully I'm not, getting psycho avowed here.
Someone may start indexing all of these and figure out. But the first one, if you could switch legs with any animal, which would it be?
Giraffe.
It was very definitive.
Yeah. The knobby knees are a little weird, but I'm not going for attractive. I'm going for utility. I want to reach things.
Do you have a secret talent?
Not that I would tell you about.
At one time, my team got these rapid fire, and then they were like, mother's maiden name, and we thought it would be a funny, security joke.
Yeah.
See if you fell for it.
I see.
But it made me a little uncomfortable, so we took
Fair.
those out. Favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni. No artichoke. No artichoke.
Artichoke.
Yeah.
Is that a new evolution?
It was. I'm pretty sure when I was 6, it was pepperonis, and now I like artichokes.
Nice. Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Are you reading anything right now?
I am. It's actually called Bowl World, and is a bit of a weird sci-fi book to explain.
Okay. Favorite subject in grade school?
It was math in grade school.
Dream vacation destination?
Mars. Mons Olympus, preferably.
That's probably the biggest dream we've had so far. Love this. Team cat or team dog?
Cat.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I want to be super intelligent.
If Aaron was a flavor of ice cream, what flavor would you be?
Rocky Road, dairy-free.
Love it. Very specific. Well, Aaron, thanks so much for joining us in the studio today on Pluralsight Spotlight. We really appreciate getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome. And to our audience, just want to thank you for joining us for this conversation. We'll put any links to any courses that we referenced in the show notes. We hope you'll give us a follow, subscribe to the series on YouTube. And again, we love your feedback. So if you have any for us to help us make this series even better, maybe there's an author you'd love to see on the series, put it in the comments. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.